To the next generation of dreamers, if we can do this, just imagine what you can do. Hey!
A new age of space exploration has begun.
This is a really exciting new era for space.
This is a big vision, but big things start small, and this is how it starts.
Welcome to the dawn of a new space age.
3 of the world's most successful entrepreneurs are putting billions of dollars on the line to launch a revolution in space travel. But this time, it's not just for astronauts.
So just imagine a world where people have equal access to space.
It is adventure and it is fun, but it's also important. What we're doing is the first step of something big.
These bold ambitions are fueled by the belief that space travel is necessary for our survival.
The overarching goal is to make life multiplanetary.
We need to do that to solve the problems here on Earth.
We're going back to the moon and we're going to Mars.
I mean, you gotta pinch yourself like, hey, is this even real?
Liftoff of the Falcon 9 and Crew Dragon. Go NASA, go SpaceX. And New Shepard has cleared the tower.
Oh my God!
Unity is pointed directly up and heading to space.
Sir Richard Branson, astronaut.
2021 will go down as the year the billionaires went to space. Grabbing headlines, igniting imaginations, and drawing fire for the big budgets behind these high-flying feats.
It's so good.
On July 11th, 2021, Richard Branson becomes the first billionaire to launch himself into space. He takes off from his Spaceport America base in New Mexico in a twin-fuselage airplane. Then, his Virgin Galactic spaceplane releases from the mothership and rockets into space. Branson and his crew fly to 53.5 miles above the Earth, past the 50-mile mark that the FAA considers the beginning of space. There, they float weightless for nearly 5 minutes.
To all you kids down there, I was once a child with a dream, looking up to the stars. Now, I'm an adult in a spaceship with lots of other wonderful adults looking down to our beautiful, beautiful Earth.
Just 9 days later, on July 20th, 2021, Jeff Bezos and his crew blast off from Blue Origin's West Texas launch site on the more traditional Blue Origin New Shepard rocket.
We have liftoff.
It takes off vertically, flying 66.5 miles high, and passing the Kármán line, an internationally recognized boundary of space.
That's incredible.
Bezos and his crew experienced nearly 4 minutes of weightlessness.
Yeah, well done!
Bezos returns safely to celebrate and makes clear that his suborbital flight is just the first step towards a future of regular trips into the solar system.
We're really almost in the barnstormer phase, right? So these are biplanes, and they're flying into a farmer's field. That's what we're doing right now. But you know where that barnstorming phase leads? To 787s.
But well before Bezos and Branson became the first billionaires in space, Elon Musk planted his flag in the private space industry revolution with his company, Space Exploration Technologies, better known as SpaceX.
I never thought we'd actually ever be in this position. Because we had no idea what we were doing.
SpaceX has been successfully launching satellites and cargo into orbit for years on its Falcon 9 rocket.
All systems are go for the Falcon 9.
Reaching orbit means traveling high enough to break free of Earth's gravitational pull and begin circling or orbiting the Earth. It requires a rocket that can travel to a height of at least 100 miles and reached nearly 17,600 miles per hour, almost 23 times the speed of sound. SpaceX didn't just leap ahead of Blue Origin and Virgin Galactic. The company was the first to make it to orbit with a NASA crew.
0. Ignition. Liftoff.
On May 30th, 2020, just over a year before the Branson and Bezos flights, SpaceX became the first private company in history to fly NASA astronauts to the International Space Station, which orbits Earth nearly 250 miles above the planet. SpaceX now has a contract with NASA to fly missions to the space station from Florida's Kennedy Space Center about every 6 months.
And now here we are with the great honor of being able to launch America's astronauts to orbit. To be launching from Pad 39A, which is where humanity first went to another heavenly body, and which was also the first shuttle flight.
Along with these relatively new aerospace companies with famous faces, industry veteran Boeing also has a contract with NASA to develop a rocket system to carry astronauts to the space station on its Starliner capsule.
We think competition is good, but I think it's also about resilience. Having more than one vehicle is a really important capability to have.
The Starliner, however, has faced multiple setbacks and is behind schedule.
The Boeing Starliner space vehicle experienced an off-nominal insertion.
So it's unfortunate. We're going to work closely together because we're partners in this, and we'll get it across the finish line and hopefully get them in space.
Meanwhile, Blue Origin is also pursuing more NASA business.
How do we get a crewed vehicle back to the surface of the moon as soon as we possibly can?
Blue Origin has recently received nearly $600 million in development money from NASA so far. But the space agency chose SpaceX over Blue Origin in the most recent round of NASA funding for moon missions, a decision Blue Origin is challenging in court.
The human landing system that we pulled together for NASA, we thought was the best of the capabilities that existed in the industry.
Virgin Galactic has a different focus: suborbital private space tourism. Though they do work with NASA on research and training. But like SpaceX and Boeing, Branson is also in the satellite business. He had his first successful launch of satellites into space in June of 2021.
We'll see the continued growth and proliferation of these constellations of satellites being put up in low Earth orbit to do remote sensing, to take images of the Earth, or to beam internet down to ground stations.
Washington Post space reporter and the Space Barons author Christian Davenport covers the exploding space industry and the 3 billionaire space investors fueling the transformation.
Today, the role of nations has been supplanted by these billionaires. They all know the value of competing, and it's sort of a new space race.
Jeff Bezos, the Amazon founder and one of the world's richest people, started Blue Origin in 2000, 2 years before Elon Musk started SpaceX, and 4 years before Richard Branson started Virgin Galactic.
The Earth is finite. If the world economy and population is to keep expanding, space is the only way to go.
Blue Origin's mission is to make space travel safe and affordable. An advancement Bezos believes will spark new industries in space to provide real solutions to the climate crisis and other pressing problems on Earth.
We're going to build a road to space, and then amazing things will happen. Then you'll have space entrepreneurs start a company in their dorm room. That can't happen today.
Welcome to the dawn of a new space age.
Virgin Group founder Richard Branson started Virgin Galactic in 2004 to take tourists into space to experience weightlessness and get the ultimate view of planet Earth.
We want to turn the next generation of dreamers into the astronauts of today and tomorrow.
PayPal and Tesla founder Elon Musk started SpaceX in 2002 with the explicit goal of transforming space technology so people can live on other planets.
She was like, why don't we see the aliens? Where are the aliens? Somebody's got to be the aliens.
SpaceX leaped ahead of its competitors by securing big-ticket contracts with NASA that have ultimately helped the company replace the space shuttle.
And the final liftoff of Discovery, a tribute to the dedication, hard work, and pride of America's space shuttle team.
NASA shut down the space shuttle program for safety reasons in 2011 and began paying Russia to transport American astronauts to the International Space Station.
And go for launch.
NASA, early in the space shuttle program, got to the point that it was thinking that the space shuttle was almost routine. They called it operational. The fact is, on the space shuttle, there were 1,500 parts called critical one parts, any one of which failed. That was it. It was catastrophe.
3, 2, 1. We have main engine start. Liftoff of the 25th Space Shuttle mission.
Challenger launches and blows up 10 miles high in the Florida sky because management was not listening to the engineers on the line. Years later, guys at the top were not listening again to the engineers on the line.
And liftoff of Space Shuttle Columbia.
And of course, in February of 2003, on the very orbiter that I had flown years earlier, the destruction of Columbia coming back home over Texas. You got to concentrate on safety. And that's what every space flyer has to understand, the risk that they're taking. And we shut down the space shuttle back in 2011. And so here we are going back in a new and exciting venture.
Now, SpaceX's game-changing reusable Falcon 9 rocket and Crew Dragon capsule brings space exploration back to American soil.
And resilience rises, not even gravity contains.
We've been working with NASA now for a long time. It really feels, it feels like one team kind of thing.
Before SpaceX, rockets were not reused, making space travel extremely expensive. But SpaceX's rocket and capsule can be used over and over again, like a commercial airplane, lowering the overall cost.
Ultimately, we want to achieve aircraft-like operations. That's how we open up the space age, that's how we send lots of people to space, and that's how we make life multiplanetary.
Blue Origin and Virgin Galactic have also developed reusable systems.
To get all that to work, you had to get the landing gear to work, guidance, navigation, control. You had to be able to understand the aerodynamics of that. You have to understand the structures of all of that.
Technology doesn't automatically advance. Technology only advances when a lot of smart people work super hard to advance that technology.
NASA is helping to fuel the revolution in space.
We wanted to unleash that ingenuity and creativity of private industry, and the proof's in the pudding. NASA is saying, you deliver the crew to the International Space Station. We want to go explore the heavens.
NASA is not the only space agency expanding its efforts. China's Human Spaceflight Agency has built a new space station that already has astronauts on board, with expansion modules planned to increase its size and capabilities. China has also announced its own plans for the Moon and Mars, and landed its first rover on the Red Planet in 2021.
Is it going to be a recreation of the space race? I don't know.
The intensity of the competition does appear to rival the early days of Russia versus the United States. But unlike the military heroes that piloted those early missions, it's a businessman who has become a modern-day space celebrity, an outspoken firebrand, and even a comedian whose dynamism has brought SpaceX into pop culture and taken a new generation of American heroes into space. While the July 2021 space flights of Richard Branson and Jeff Bezos grabbed headlines,
Shepard cleared south.
it's SpaceX that has been the dominant force in private spaceflight for the last decade.
Welcome to SpaceX. Here we are in the lobby.
Elon Musk was just 31 years old when he started SpaceX in 2002. The company was almost driven into bankruptcy by several early failures that raised doubts about the reliability of its rockets.
It took us 4 flights to get to orbit with Falcon 1. And if that 4th flight hadn't worked, we would have run out of money and gone bankrupt. That would have been it. That's all the money we had. Fortunately, that 4th flight worked.
Then, in 2014, NASA chose SpaceX and Boeing over Blue Origin and others to develop a new generation of spacecraft for astronaut travel. Virgin Galactic was never in the running. 6 years later, Elon Musk's brainchild is the first to be ready for a crew. On May 30th, 2020, SpaceX launches astronauts into space for the first time in the company's history, as Bob Behnken and Doug Hurley embark on their mission to the International Space Station.
Let's light this candle, I agree.
We really are in another golden age, if you will. It's neat to see, and it's neat to be the ground floor of that now with what we're doing with SpaceX.
For the first time since 2011 and the end of the shuttle program, NASA astronauts are blasting off from the United States rather than Russia.
Dragon SpaceX initiating seat rotation.
It's also the first time NASA astronauts fly on a privately owned and operated rocket system.
Dragon SpaceX, go for launch.
Elon Musk watches his company's historic achievement from the same control center used for the Apollo moon missions at Kennedy Space Center.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Ignition. Liftoff of the Falcon 9 and Crew Dragon. Go NASA. Go SpaceX. Godspeed, Bob and Doug.
This single launch turns SpaceX from an almost bankrupt space startup into the leader in private human spaceflight.
Falcon power and telemetry nominal.
It's really a great honor that we're able to use these hallowed grounds. Yeah, I mean, you gotta pinch yourself like, hey, is this even real, you know? Wow.
Vehicle is supersonic.
We've exceeded Mach 1 on the Falcon 9.
The SpaceX Falcon 9 rocket has 2 stages, or sections. The first stage propels the capsule to the edge of space at nearly 8,000 miles per hour, 10 times the speed of sound, and separates at approximately 50 miles above the Earth.
Falcon stage separation confirmed.
The SpaceX rocket is revolutionary. It is the first and so far only rocket that is powerful enough to launch into low Earth orbit with a reusable first stage.
This is really the fundamental revolution in spaceflight is reusability. And so the closer we get to full and rapid reusability, that's really what opens up a lot of potential in space.
Stage 1 entry burn startup.
After separation, the first stage fires its thrusters, turns itself around, and re-enters Earth's atmosphere, touching down on a landing pad or on a drone ship at sea.
Falcon 9 has landed.
The crazy thing is that, except for Falcon 9, all the other rockets in the world are expendable.
After the first stage separates, the second stage flies the capsule into orbit. Then, the second stage also separates, and the Crew Dragon capsule is on its own.
HVAC ignition.
The second stage is so far proven too difficult to reuse, because it returns from a greater distance and at a higher speed.
Dragon separation confirmed.
Separation confirmed.
Bob, Doug, on behalf of the entire launch team, thanks for flying with Falcon 9 today. We hope you enjoyed the ride.
Congratulations to you for the first human ride for Falcon 9.
The capsule reaches orbital velocity, its maximum speed of nearly 17,500 miles per hour around the Earth, nearly 10 times as fast as a speeding bullet.
Welcome aboard, Dragon.
Bob Behnken and Doug Hurley are the first astronauts to control the futuristic spacecraft.
We're in a brand new spaceship, a spaceship that's a lot different than the space shuttle, in that it has touch display screens that allow us to accomplish most of the interfacing requirements that we have.
The International Space Station is ready for docking.
Dragon, go for docking.
The capsule uses thrusters and a laser navigation system to autonomously dock itself.
Docking complete.
Welcome aboard the International Space Station, Bob and Doug.
It's great to get the United States back in the crewed launch business, and my compliments to the folks back at SpaceX for how well it flew.
The astronauts spend 2 months on board testing the capsule to make sure everything works correctly with the space station. But no mission can be considered a success until astronauts return safely to Earth.
Go for undocking departure.
We are proceeding toward the landing site.
I worry most about entry, descent, and landing. You know, falling down into the Earth's gravity, that's a big deal. You re-enter, you're coming in around 17,000 miles an hour, and that's super duper fast. The gases of the atmosphere are running across the surface of the vehicle, and that's creating friction, which creates heat. The hottest that you actually feel is around 3,500 degrees, and that's hot.
When the capsule's descent falls below the speed of sound, it deploys 2 sets of parachutes.
Visual, 2 drogues out.
Copy, 2 drogues.
We are visual on 4 chutes out.
The Crew Dragon capsule is designed to land in the water.
200 meters.
I cannot think of a safer design. I'll put it that way. And neither can NASA.
We are brace for splashdown.
Splashdown. On behalf of the SpaceX and NASA teams, welcome back to planet Earth. Thanks for flying SpaceX.
The SpaceX mission makes headlines around the world. And while Boeing is also in the news with further delays, Blue Origin and Virgin Galactic are still flying under the radar. Neither company has a contract with NASA to fly astronauts to the space station. And no one has an inkling that Jeff Bezos and Richard Branson might announce plans to go to space. But that's about to change.
What better way to endorse the validity and the safety and the reliability of the vehicles than flying in it yourself?
How exciting is this? Come on.
"13 days after Jeff Bezos announces to the world that he is going to fly to space, Richard Branson steals his thunder, tweeting that he's going to space too, 9 days before Bezos.
This July, our dream will become a reality.
They are competing against each other. There is a race, and certainly Richard wanted to beat Jeff to go to space.
As Branson's launch date nears, anticipation around the world builds. Branson, a billionaire space visionary who made his fortune in music, airlines, and as a premium brand, would be putting his own life on the line.
There's a lot of romance and optimism and, frankly, hype that goes into these missions, but the bottom line is they're incredibly risky.
On July 11th, 2021, at 3 in the morning, Elon Musk shows up to wish Branson luck. Then, Branson throws a huge party at his Spaceport America in New Mexico.
It was not anything like a typical NASA government launch. It was like a festival. People were having a lot of fun. It was typical Virgin Galactic, typical Richard Branson.
Virgin Galactic's historic flight has been a long time coming.
In 1991, I went and registered the name Virgin Galactic Airways. I also registered Virgin Intergalactic Airways, since I'm an optimist.
The registered name went unused for 13 years, while the British tycoon set ballooning and sailing records. But it's a competition in the early 2000s called the Ansari X Prize that led Branson to finally start Virgin Galactic in 2004.
Paul Allen was trying to win the X Prize for a spaceship to go into space twice within 2 weeks. And we shook hands with Paul Allen about sponsoring that flight.
The X Prize was an award set up by a non-profit to encourage technological development to benefit humanity. $10 million would be given to the first non-government organization to launch a reusable crewed spacecraft into space twice within 2 weeks. In 2004, Microsoft co-founder Paul Allen won the X Prize with Spaceship One, a rocket plane that dropped from a twin fuselage airplane. It was the first privately funded human spaceflight.
And then once it was successful, Paul was not interested in really putting people into space. He put the spaceship into the museum.
Branson bought the technology used to build Spaceship One to grow Virgin Galactic into the space tourism company it is today.
And we set about, building a space line.
Spaceship Two is the result. An air-launched rocket plane that takes off attached to the middle of a twin-cabin airplane mothership called the White Knight II. At between 40,000 and 50,000 feet, Spaceship Two drops, fires up its single rocket engine, and accelerates to Mach 3, nearly 2,300 miles per hour in about 60 seconds.
It's a considerable push. It's a 3G acceleration. It only takes about 8 seconds until we go supersonic.
The air launch system requires a less powerful rocket and less rocket fuel than a vertical launch system to break free of Earth's gravity.
Air launch is a very efficient and safe way of getting into space. If the motor doesn't light or only burns for a few seconds, it's no big deal. We just glide back down and land.
Spaceship Two flies above 50 miles, the altitude the FAA defines as the beginning of space.
It was a great burn.
Where passengers experience several minutes of weightlessness and a breathtaking view of Earth.
So cool. There's the Sea of Cortez over there. I can see the Baja Peninsula, Dave.
Then, Spaceship Two glides back to Earth and lands on a runway like an airplane. A feature Branson hopes could lead to a revolution in air travel beyond even what the Concorde offered. But the high-speed aerodynamics make rocket planes difficult to scale up in size and payload.
We're the only spaceship company that actually has wings on our spaceship, and that means that we can, start to seriously think about point-to-point travel at some time.
What they'd ultimately like to do is build a next-generation space plane that would be capable of taking off from one spaceport, say in New Mexico, and flying to another one, say in the Middle East, and cutting the travel time if you were going through space.
Virgin Galactic started taking reservations for space flights in 2005. Celebrities, including Justin Bieber and Angelina Jolie, have already signed up.
When Richard Branson first founded the company in 2004, he thought he would be flying people to space by as early as 2007. Of course, that didn't happen. There were all kinds of technical challenges.
In 2012, Branson announces he is going to fly to space the following year in Spaceship Two. But before Branson's flight, tragedy strikes. Spaceship Two breaks apart during a test flight when a part of the plane used for landing is deployed prematurely, creating turbulence that rips the tail off. Co-pilot Mike Alsbury is killed, and pilot Pete Siebold is seriously injured.
Well, that day obviously was a bad day, to say the least. And we talked to the astronauts, and they were almost with one voice said, we want you to push on. We're very much doing it in Mike's memory.
Seven years later, after 4 crewed test flights, Branson himself prepares to strap into the rebuilt Spaceship Two, named Virgin Spaceship Unity, or VSS Unity, for his first flight to space. Unlike Jeff Bezos' autonomous flight, pilots Dave McKay and Mike Masucci actually fly the spacecraft.
3, 2, 1, release.
Fire.
The beauty of our system is that it's designed around the passenger experience. So you get that slightly falling feeling in your stomach, which we all enjoy on a roller coaster.
Welcome to space. You're clear to unstrap.
Oh my God.
Be quiet. Incredible.
Woo!
The view from space is incredible and absolutely breathtaking, and it's hard to describe. I felt so small looking at the planet, but I didn't feel insignificant.
Wow.
And please return to your seats and strap in. Approach and re-entry.
The successful flight makes Branson the first billionaire to fly to space on his own company's spaceship.
I think we are at an inflection point in history. I mean, just looking around today at what's going on, I'm so impressed and so inspired. This is really, I frankly think, the start of it all.
The huge event only increases the fascination with Jeff Bezos' flight, scheduled for 9 days later. The Branson flight is the first of what the company says are many more to come with paying customers.
Virgin Galactic announced their new price of $450,000 after Blue Origin had auctioned off a seat on that first flight. Ultimately, both companies, after charging these premium prices, hope that if they're able to fly more frequently, the cost will eventually come down to something that's more reasonable.
Financial analysts estimate the space tourism market could be worth $8 billion by 2030, with 1 million potential customers who want to go and can afford the ticket price.
You know, I'm sure that Jeff will give you lots of reasons why his is better than ours, and I could give you lots of reasons about why mine is better than theirs, but I mean, they're both going to be extraordinary experiences.
A month and a half after Branson's trip to space, the FAA announces that it is investigating the flight for veering off course during descent and grounds the spaceplane. Branson is expanding his operations in space with Virgin Orbit. The company uses the same air launch technology to send satellites into orbit. Virgin Galactic has a contract with NASA to carry small science experiments on its suborbital flights, and like SpaceX, is working to get more business from the space agency. Blue Origin is also courting NASA business.
NASA still is the premier space company, and that's what we hold as a standard, that this is how you do what you do.
But it's Jeff Bezos' flight to space that will introduce Blue Origin to the world. Before July 20th, 2021, many people had never heard of Blue Origin. But that quickly changes when Jeff Bezos blasts off to space from his West Texas launch facility aboard the New Shepard rocket system.
It's not only adventure, it is adventure and it is fun, but it's also important because what we're doing is the first step of something big.
Bezos flies with 3 passengers: brother Mark Bezos, Dutch teen and space enthusiast Oliver Damon, whose father paid an undisclosed amount for the seat in a charity auction, and aviation pioneer Wally Funk.
Woo! I can hardly wait.
In the 1960s, Funk trained to become an astronaut in a privately funded program for women, but she never made it to space. NASA didn't start recruiting women for its astronaut program until 1978.
They told me that I had done better and completed the work faster than any of the guys. I didn't think that I would ever get to go up. It's the best thing that ever happened to me.
The New Shepard, named for astronaut Alan Shepard, the first American to fly into suborbital space, is a two-part system made up of a single-stage self-flying rocket that carries a passenger capsule on top.
Jeff Bezos' flight on Blue Origin, that was the first time that Blue Origin had ever flown humans before.
It's the culmination of years and years of meticulous work to make sure not only could we go do it, but could we do it with enough certainty that we would send anyone on there.
The 10-minute fully autonomous flight is suborbital, meaning the capsule doesn't go high enough to begin circling the Earth.
They go up and they come straight back down.
Good morning, astronauts, and welcome aboard the RSS First Step. Let's get things started with the comm check.
I have you loud and clear.
T-minus 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, command engine start, 2, 1.
On our way to space with our first human crew. Go, Jeff. Go, Mark. Go, Wally. Go, Oliver. You are going to space.
On to how it felt. Oh my God!
Oh, wow. You get to look out the window. Holy shit, done. Oh, wow.
We went right on up, and I saw darkness. I was going into space. I felt great.
The capsule separates from the rocket at about 47 miles high and continues to an apex of 65.5 miles. That's above the 62-mile internationally recognized boundary of space called the Kármán line, and 12 miles farther than the 53.5 miles Richard Branson flew on his space plane 9 days earlier.
Oh, wow. Oh, wow.
That's incredible.
Jeff Bezos and his crew experienced weightlessness for nearly 4 minutes.
Here, catch.
I've been waiting a long time to finally get it up there.
All right, see if you can catch this on the ground.
Yes! Well done!
Look at the blackness of space. The most profound piece of it for me was looking out at the Earth and looking at the Earth's atmosphere. It's one thing to recognize that intellectually. This is incredible. It's another thing to actually see with your own eyes how fragile it really is.
While the capsule floats in space, the reusable rocket flies itself back to Earth and lands.
Your booster has landed.
Like SpaceX's Falcon 9 rocket, the New Shepard rocket and capsule can be launched over and over again.
Is it everything you thought it would be?
After the New Shepard capsule reaches its top point, it begins a stable free fall back to Earth, using 2 sets of parachutes to slow down.
Stand by main.
A retro thrust system fires right before touchdown, creating a gentle landing around 1 mile per hour.
Blue Control Bezos, best day ever.
It's a big team. They've been working on it for many years, and they have done an extraordinary job of building the most reliable, most beautiful, most fun vehicle.
Damon, at 18, becomes the youngest person in space. And Funk, at 82, becomes the oldest.
We did that to make sure that everybody understood that space is now open to everyone.
I loved it. I can hardly wait to go again.
The successful flight is more than 20 years in the making.
If you're not passionate about space, go figure something else out to do, because this business is too hard if you're not passionate about it.
For most of its history, Blue Origin has kept its plans under wraps, though 2 previous test vehicles have been documented. The Karen, which flew to 316 feet in 2005, and the Goddard, which flew the first of 3 test flights in 2006. But it's the New Shepard that proved itself worthy of crewed missions. Despite missing several early milestones for its first human flight, Blue Origin continued testing New Shepard relentlessly, starting in 2012, to ensure it was safe.
There is no way to rush a rocket development process. You can't cut corners. It needs to be methodical and deliberate. Our motto is gradatum ferociter, which means step by step ferociously.
The company is building a space tourism business on these short trips.
We're going to fly human missions twice more this year. We're approaching $100 million in private sales already.
Please make your way to the hatch. There is this pent-up demand that people want to go to space, and they want to go to space now, and they're willing to pay for it.
But Bezos has bigger missions and rockets in the works.
New Glenn is New Shepard's big brother. New Glenn is big enough that New Shepard will fit in the payload bay of New Glenn.
New Glenn is Blue Origin's much bigger rocket. It will be able to go into orbit and even travel to the moon and beyond.
We're human rating New Glenn to make sure that from the beginning, we are able to actually go fly people on that vehicle as well.
The rocket system is named after astronaut John Glenn, who became the first American to reach orbit in 1962.
Everything that is used in New Shepard, we transferred that knowledge over to New Glenn. From the propulsion technology to the landing, to the thermal protection systems, to the avionics suites, it's all used to make New Glenn easier to get to the finish line.
The New Glenn is being built at Blue Origin's sprawling complex at NASA's Kennedy Space Center in Florida. The rocket factory, integration facility, and launch pad are all within 10 miles of each other.
We want to have that rocket factory real close to the launch site because with the scale and size of what we're building, you can't transport it on open roads.
Thanks so much for having us.
This is our overlook. So from here, we're up on the second floor, but you really get a feel for the production line of New Glenn.
This is the first time cameras have ever been allowed at the facility.
This factory is built around raw stock coming in the south side, aluminum and components, and then a full rocket completed going out the north side. So it's a full up factory here with a moving line that starts with a tank, builds a stage, adds stuff to the stage to make it into a rocket, and then we head out to the pad.
The Florida launch site is where Blue Origin is building a road to space.
This is where the launch process starts. Stage one is that first stage of the rocket at the bottom. Second stage is the middle part that gets it into orbit. And then we have the payload encapsulated in a payload fairing at the top. So those three things come together in this building. We've got the doors opening.
And this gives you a sense of the scale at how just big this rocket's gonna be. I mean, it's just amazing.
Inside here is 6-foot foundations to support all the weight and load of the transporter erector and the vehicle on top of it. That's over 3 million pounds.
Oh my gosh. Well, and this just gives you a sense where you can imagine the rocket in between these two lightning towers that are obviously there in case there's a lightning strike to protect the rocket.
That's right.
Tell me a little bit about what it takes to build a brand new launch pad from scratch.
Well, when you're launching one of the biggest rockets that's ever flown, you can't do that on an old launch pad that was built for a smaller rocket.
Right.
You have to build a brand new infrastructure as we've done here. So this is the launch pad. This is the heart of it right here.
Ultimately, this is where the rocket's gonna come up and go vertical.
That's right. We're gonna head up 574 feet tall.
Hello.
Hey. This is just a construction elevator,
Okay.
but this is where the astronauts are going to load from. They will come up an elevator to the top of the tower, load into a space vehicle on New Glenn, and launch from this site.
Oh my God, look at this. This is not for the faint of heart.
This is a great place to point out how vertically integrated New Glenn is. You can see our factory. See the light blue with the white tower there? So that is our manufacturing complex.
The facility is the epicenter of Jeff Bezos' effort to build the infrastructure necessary to develop space.
Getting to space is so expensive and so hard. When we started Amazon, I didn't have to build an infrastructure system to deliver parcels. The U.S. Postal Service already existed. For space, it's not like that. I want to dramatically lower that cost so that 20 years from now, a new generation of people can do amazing things in space.
The New Glenn will be one of the biggest rockets ever built. Part of a new class of super heavy rockets in the works at Blue Origin, as well as at NASA and SpaceX.
It's a very large vehicle, and it's designed for sending humans up to space. The first stage is designed to be reused 25 times.
Blue Origin has a special team working to make New Glenn's second stage reusable as well.
The reason that's really important to us is because it lowers the cost to access space.
New Glenn's inaugural test flight is currently scheduled for late 2022. NASA will be watching. The space agency has expressed interest in adding New Glenn to its fleet of orbital rockets to take cargo and astronauts to space.
Now that Jeff Bezos has stood down as CEO of Amazon, he is going to be much more intensely focused on getting their delayed New Glenn rocket to orbit.
But New Glenn won't be competing with just SpaceX for NASA business. Industry behemoth Boeing is also a major player, with plans to send NASA astronauts to the space station. But a crucial launch hangs in the balance.
This is a first flight, and there are going to be unexpected things.
Go Starliner.
On April 23, 2021, just a few months before Richard Branson and Jeff Bezos fly to suborbital space, Elon Musk meets with a team of 4 astronauts about to lift off on another SpaceX mission to the International Space Station.
Obviously, there's nothing more important than ensuring that the safety of the astronauts.
This is the 3rd time SpaceX is flying astronauts to the space station for NASA. It's part of a new service the company will provide every 6 months as a replacement for the space shuttle.
Our cycle that we have crew members on orbit is about 180 days. It's a critical part of the long-term operations and maintenance of the International Space Station.
This is the first time NASA is allowing astronauts to fly on a reused rocket and capsule. The stresses of spaceflight, including violent launches and radiation exposure, can damage the spacecraft, so a thorough inspection is required before any reuse.
The turnaround time, though, is getting faster and faster. When you talk about rapid reusability, I don't know about you, but I'd personally rather fly on a booster that's
flight proven. It's a flight proven rocket. I mean, if it's an airplane, would you rather fly on the first flight out of the factory or after it's flown a bunch of missions? You know, so I think there's actually a lot of merit to flying on something that has proven itself in flight.
Dragon SpaceX initiating seat rotation.
Dragon is in countdown.
Endeavour is ready to go.
Dragon SpaceX, go for launch.
10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Ignition. And liftoff. Godspeed, Endeavour and Crew 2.
Endeavour launches once again. 4 astronauts from 3 countries on Crew 2, now making their way to the one and only International Space Station.
I really believe in being as paranoid as possible. We've really done everything we could possibly think of to make Dragon the safest vehicle. The proof's in the pudding, obviously.
But when it comes to having a long track record with NASA, there's a fourth player in the mix that has decades on its rivals. Defense contractor and aerospace giant Boeing is in the game.
Boeing's been contracted to develop, design, test, and then execute the mission of taking astronauts to the International Space Station.
Boeing has had a hand in every manned endeavor from American soil to get to space. Gemini, Mercury, Apollo, Space Shuttle, and the space station too. We are taking advantage of all that design history.
Boeing has been working with NASA since the space agency was established by Congress in 1958. In 2014, NASA chose both SpaceX and Boeing to start building a replacement for the space shuttle, believing the competition between the two companies would help grow the space industry.
Even though we never admit that we're looking at each other out the side view mirror, we always are. So I really do think it makes you look much more critically at yourself.
Boeing's spacecraft is called the Starliner, Crew Space Transportation 100.
This vehicle is reusable. We can actually fit up to 7 people in here.
The Starliner capsule flies atop a modified Atlas V rocket that Boeing builds with Lockheed Martin. It's a 2-stage rocket. After liftoff, the first stage separates after approximately 4 minutes, and the second stage propels the Starliner capsule into orbit. Then, the capsule will use its thrusters to reach the space station. Starliner can fly and dock autonomously, but it also has a control panel based on past designs. In contrast, SpaceX's all-touchscreen display was newly designed from the ground up.
The Dragon spacecraft has some manual control capability, but is not as robust as the Starliner is.
So it's a very familiar cockpit, even though it's a brand new spacecraft.
After its mission in space, the Starliner capsule uses parachutes to slow down before an airbag deploys for landing on the ground.
SpaceX's Dragon spacecraft lands like the spacecraft from the Apollo era in the ocean, splashdown. Boeing, by contrast, its Starliner lands on land.
Boeing's Starliner and SpaceX's Crew Dragon capsules were neck and neck in their development process.
Everybody thought that Boeing was going to fly first. They were the big aerospace giant.
Go Starliner.
Liftoff, the rise of Starliner, and a new era in human spaceflight.
And we have good indication of stage separation.
But in December 2019, Starliner's first uncrewed test flight to the space station goes awry.
We do have an off-nominal insertion reported.
The first flight of Starliner missed the middle part of the mission. It was docking to the International Space Station.
There was a good launch, but once the spacecraft was flying on its own, it encountered a serious problem with its timing clock. It sort of dictates when all of the maneuvers are to be happening. And as a result, they're going to have to bring the spacecraft back. This appears at this point to be a real devastating blow for Boeing and for NASA and for the program as a whole.
Despite the aborted mission, the Starliner capsule still returns to Earth safely.
Starliner touches down in the desert in New Mexico.
It takes Boeing more than a year to fix the problem, allowing the underdog SpaceX to leap ahead of the legacy giant.
Station ready for docking.
SpaceX was first off the bat and able to get their Dragon certified, and we are working with Boeing to get them certified too.
It's very important that we get this mission right.
The day before Boeing is set to launch Starliner's second uncrewed test mission to the space station, an emergency erupts at the station.
From Mission Control Houston and the International Space Station Flight Control Room. 8 days after its launch from the Baikonur Cosmodrome in Kazakhstan, a new module has arrived at the International Space Station. The Nyoka multipurpose laboratory module's thrusters began to fire inadvertently and unexpectedly, and that resulted in the International Space Station going about 45 degrees out of attitude.
Please deactivate Pauba band.
As a result of a command, the Nyoka started to fire and the station started to drift out of control. The thing that I'm really proud of was how well the two control teams in Moscow and Houston worked closely together to save the vehicle, protect the crew.
NASA reschedules the Boeing launch for 6 days later. On August 3rd, 2021, the whole world is watching as Boeing attempts to prove Starliner is ready. This time, a valve issue scrubs the launch, and Boeing is forced to disassemble the rocket system to investigate the issue further.
It's extremely unfortunate that we got so close, and it's really disappointing.
Meanwhile, SpaceX makes another big move. The company books its first private flight into space, called Inspiration 4. It's financed by tech billionaire Jared Isaacman.
The door is open to space now. Everyday people that are going up to space. And can we continue to keep that door open and make space accessible to everyone? Because it really does belong to everyone.
The Inspiration 4 mission will test the limits of what civilians can endure in space like never before.
Mission and liftoff.
Welcome to historic Launch Complex 39A. It's an honor to be here to launch the first all-commercial astronaut mission to orbit.
The first all-civilian crew, Inspiration 4, is preparing to blast off on the same SpaceX rocket system NASA astronauts have been using to travel to the space station.
I'd like to introduce you to Jared Isaacman. He's the CEO and founder of Shift4 Systems. He'll be commanding our next mission.
It's really an honor and a lifelong dream to be here, at the epicenter of really awe-inspiring history.
Tech billionaire Jared Isaacman paid SpaceX an undisclosed amount for the flight and is using the mission to raise money for St. Jude's Children's Research Hospital with a goal of reaching $200 million.
It just really sunk into me. We could do something big, like really big. So I gave the first $100 million towards that effort.
Scheduled for mid-September of 2021, this multi-day, fully orbital flight is in an entirely different league than the brief flights Jeff Bezos and Richard Branson took to the edge of space.
It's the first time everyday people not sent by a world superpower are going to be up in orbit. I knew it was a platform where we could make a really significant impact.
Isaacman keeps one seat on Inspiration 4 for himself and uses two others to raise money for St. Jude's in an online competition.
From February 1st through March 1st, anyone could go to the Inspiration 4 website, make a donation to St. Jude Children's Research Hospital, and at the end of the month, at random, we were going to select someone.
One of the winners is Air Force veteran Chris Sambrowski.
Stars aligned. He was a space camp counselor as a kid, wound up working on some of the biggest rockets in the U.S. Air Force, and now he's going to ride on one, which is pretty cool.
The other seat raises money by finding a space enthusiast with an entrepreneurial spirit. The winner is college science professor Cyan Proctor.
Being named as the first Black female pilot of a spacecraft is amazing. And so here I am at 51, learning to fly a Dragon.
Jared Isaacman also gives a seat to physician's assistant Haley Arsenault, a former St. Jude's patient who now works at the hospital.
I came from a family that was always interested in space. We actually visited NASA in Houston. I think everyone who goes there wants to be an astronaut. I was diagnosed with bone cancer at age 10. those thoughts of being an astronaut really went to the back burner, and I thought this diagnosis was a death sentence. A few days later, I was walking through the doors of St. Jude and immediately felt hope. And I think that hope has really stayed with me through my entire life.
Flying with a titanium rod in her leg, the cancer survivor will be the first in space with a prosthesis.
I'm definitely most excited about calling the St. Jude kids from space. When you're going through cancer treatment, it can be difficult to even let yourself look towards the future. I hope that it gets them to just not lose hope.
The Inspiration 4 mission will spend several days orbiting Earth, 360 miles above the planet, about 100 miles higher than the space station.
Will be the first mission that we fly with people.
We're creating a custom-made glass dome so you can just sort of put your head up in this glass dome and just be in space. It's going to feel amazing, I think.
But the extended time in orbit also means that more could go wrong. So the Inspiration 4 crew must undergo much more intensive training than the Bezos and Branson crews required. The danger is all too real. One of NASA's first attempts to send civilians to space ended in tragedy.
Krista McAuliffe, teacher in space.
The first school teacher to fly to space, Krista McAuliffe, and her crew were killed when the Space Shuttle Challenger exploded in 1986.
Flight controllers here looking very carefully at the situation. Obviously a major malfunction.
The catastrophe halted NASA's plan to send private citizens into space.
The shuttle had its day, but Falcon and Dragon, I think, have the best safety potential of any vehicle that's ever flown. It's what I would put anyone on, you know, and any loved one on. So.
A new tragedy could stop the rapidly growing space tourism industry in its tracks.
I think even in the case of the Challenger situation, I mean, everybody knew what they were signing up for in that, no different than we do with Inspiration 4. You know, as Elon says, the risk to space exploration is not zero.
I think it is absolutely true that in the great span of time, extremely probable that we will eventually see a fatality. And frankly, someday we'll likely lose a private citizen.
Richard Garriott was one of the first 7 paying tourists that Russia took to the space station between 2001 and 2009.
The critics out there would say, why are we spending this amazing amount of money on getting a few people up into space? Unless you get people to fund it when it's really expensive, you won't get the price down to where it's now affordable for everyone else.
SpaceX is working with Axiom Space to prepare civilian crews for stays on the space station.
Axiom has already negotiated with NASA the ability to have private access through the U.S. government portions of the International Space Station.
And this is not cheap. This is costing these private citizens about $55 million each for the ride to space. NASA's going to get a significant portion of that money.
Axiom is selling these seats to private astronauts, and if they can pass a preliminary medical test, then they're part of the crew.
Former NASA astronaut Michael Lopez Alegria is helping train his 3 crewmates for the mission, all private citizens and paying customers.
We'll spend about 8 days docked to the ISS. Really, I'm there to facilitate their experience and also to make sure that they do not negatively impact the ISS crew.
Axiom already has reservations for 3 additional civilian missions to the space station. And movie makers are booking flights as well. American producers are working with Axiom to send Tom Cruise to the space station to film. But they may be beaten to the location by a Russian production with plans to film on the ISS in October of 2021.
You're seeing the space station being used not just for science and experiments, but to become really a part of popular culture.
And the space station is just a starting point. In the future, structures like the ISS will serve as transfer stations as NASA ventures to the Moon, Mars, and beyond. And human outposts off Earth go from science fiction to reality.
We were given a gift, this nearby body called the Moon.
The Moon has always held a special allure for space exploration. Neil Armstrong's moon landing has been referred to as the greatest achievement in history.
One giant leap for mankind.
But the Moon also has immense value for exploring the universe.
One of the most important things we know about the Moon today is that there's water there. It's in the form of ice. You can use electrolysis to break down water into hydrogen and oxygen, and you have propellants.
Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk, among others, believe the Moon will become a base from which missions can launch farther into space.
Let us get humanity back to the Moon and have a base on the Moon, a city on the Moon, base on Mars, a city on Mars, to make life multiplanetary.
Rockets blasting off in the Moon's thinner atmosphere require much less fuel than launching from Earth.
The Moon has 6 times less gravity than Earth. It takes 24 times less energy to lift a pound off the Moon than it does to lift a pound off the Earth.
Moon then becomes a gas station in space where you could use the Moon as a base to launch rockets to go further into space, onto Mars.
NASA also believes in the Moon's value and is preparing to send astronauts to the lunar surface for the first time since 1972.
We are going to go back to the Moon, and this time we are going to stay.
In 2017, the space agency starts the Artemis program with the goal of establishing a permanent presence on the lunar surface.
The Artemis program is to send the first woman and the first person of color to set foot on the Moon.
NASA has an ambitious goal to land on the Moon's south pole by 2024. China and Russia are teaming up for their own Moon mission to the same location.
China and Russia announced together that they are going to land on the south pole of the Moon. That's where the ice is.
The Moon's ice deposits are prized for the water they can provide. That water can be used for both survival and for making rocket fuel out of the hydrogen and oxygen in the water.
You're not having to bring fuel up from the surface of the Earth. You can actually create fuel depots.
NASA's Artemis program is currently training a diverse group of 18 astronauts for missions to the Moon.
My space bucket list consists of one thing: to work on the surface of the Moon. That's a dream.
Space is still very risky. There's going to be increased radiation. We'll have to build structures or go underground to protect the human body from that radiation.
The Moon is nearly 250,000 miles from Earth, 1,000 times farther than the space station. NASA is building one of the largest and most powerful rockets that can carry enough fuel to get there. It's called the Space Launch System, or SLS.
It is being assembled, it's being stacked. The components are being put together vertically as we speak.
The vertical construction allows the massive rocket to be moved upright to the launch pad when it's ready to blast off. The main SLS fuel tank is more than 200 feet tall, as high as a 15-story building, and can hold 1.5 Olympic-sized swimming pools worth of rocket fuel. It's flanked by 2 solid rocket fuel boosters.
These solid rocket boosters are taller than the ones on the space shuttle, so when those babies light off, you definitely know that you're going someplace. You just hope that it's straight up.
The SLS has a capsule on top called Orion that can carry up to 6 astronauts. When the rocket reaches approximately 100 miles above Earth, the Orion capsule separates, fires up its engines, and accelerates to more than 24,500 miles per hour. Fast enough to overcome the pull of Earth's orbit and propel the astronauts to the Moon. But Orion doesn't land on the Moon. The capsule docks with a new space station NASA is building called Gateway that will orbit the moon and serve as a staging point for astronauts to go to the lunar surface and eventually to Mars.
We will have a gateway so that when the crew does arrive, they can put together exactly what they need to go down to the surface of the moon. A human lander system is going to be a critical part of that.
SpaceX, Blue Origin, and a third company, Dynetics, have been working with NASA on the lunar landing system since 2017.
It's SpaceX that has continually shown its ability to move quickly, and it's developing its next generation Starship rocket, land astronauts on the lunar surface with incredible speed.
Starship is a massive spaceship SpaceX is developing to go to Mars, and the lunar lander is a modified version that will dock and undock with Gateway, and then land vertically on the moon and take off again to return to Gateway.
There are no runways on the moon or Mars. The right architecture is vertical takeoff and landing because that's the only way you can go to the moon or go to Mars.
Blue Origin's lunar lander is also a vertical takeoff and landing system that is designed to transport astronauts from Gateway to the surface of the moon and back.
Early on in the procurement for the lunar lander, a lot of people thought Blue Origin had the lead because in the initial round of funding, they won the most.
But on April 16, 2021, NASA selects SpaceX over Blue Origin to move forward with the Human Landing System, or HLS, for the moon.
What was your reaction when you got the HLS contract?
Love NASA even more. We've got a good relationship and a lot of mutual respect.
It's a crushing blow to Blue Origin, but Jeff Bezos doesn't give up.
They not only filed a protest with the Government Accountability Office, filed a lawsuit in the Court of Federal Claims. They've been lobbying Congress, waging this PR war in the media.
Jeff Bezos also offers to pay $2 billion in development costs if NASA adds Blue Origin to the Artemis program.
Who would not want to talk about $2 billion of investment?
NASA will use the final lunar lander to build the Artemis base camp, a permanent outpost on the moon.
And the more we expand our infrastructure, the more we will expand our capabilities in space. It's not all that different from how we started getting commercial flights in airplanes.
But the moon is not the limit. Even more ambitious missions are in the works. Trips to Mars will test the limits of human spaceflight beyond anything ever experienced.
These missions are going to be incredibly hard.
Mars is the most Earth-like planet in our solar system, and no one is more dedicated to sending humans to Mars than Elon Musk and SpaceX.
The reason I started SpaceX back in 2002 was really just to try to help us get to Mars.
Musk believes populating other planets is necessary for the survival of the human race.
That was the founding principle when he started SpaceX back in 2002. And if something were to happen to Earth, humanity could go the way of the dinosaur, and there's no plan B, there's no backup plan.
Musk is not alone.
A little secret I like to tell people is single planet species don't survive. How we use this opportunity, the moon and Mars, will depend on our future in space.
NASA scientist Dr. James Garvin is one of many space visionaries who believe inhabiting Mars is the next step in human evolution.
We will, women and men, go to Mars. That's in our destiny, and we will get there.
Jeff Bezos also believes that we will inhabit other planets. And to get to Mars, Bezos believes the first stop has to be the moon.
We need to go to space. It's not optional. You're going to need a lot of supplies to go to Mars. Go to the moon. Get yourself set up there. Mine propellants. Build a fuel depot there.
The United States and China also announced plans to send astronauts to Mars in the 2030s.
The Artemis program is going to do things on the moon to go all the way to Mars with crew and to sustain that crew on the surface of Mars for as long as it takes until we can return to Earth when the planets align.
As Mars and Earth rotate around the sun at different speeds, they become closest every 26 months. It takes about 7 months to make the journey. Once the astronauts reach Mars, they will have to stay for another 26 months before a return trip to Earth, if they return at all.
It's going to be a real stretch to keep humans alive and healthy, and we've got to develop those new technologies.
The astronauts' mental health is as important as their physical health, and the isolation and duration of a Mars mission is unprecedented.
We're figuring out how to have good nutritional food that keeps them psychologically happy.
NASA has been studying the planet for decades, sending the first probes to the surface in 1976.
8, 7,
On July 30th, 2020, the space agency launches the Mars Perseverance rover. Its mission? To learn more about the planet's history and prepare us for future human missions to the planet.
and liftoff as the countdown to Mars continues.
And we have successful separation of Mars 2020 with the Perseverance rover.
I don't think I'm exaggerating when I say that entry, descent, and landing is the most critical and most dangerous part of the mission.
The parachute has deployed and we are seeing significant deceleration and the heat shield has been separated. Perseverance is now slowed to subsonic speeds. Tracking maneuver has started. We're 20 meters off the surface. Touchdown confirmed. Perseverance safely on the surface of Mars, ready to begin seeking the sands of past life.
Perseverance is a rover, and there's 4 objectives we're going after. Our studies are of the geology and the environment on Mars. Find traces of ancient life. Collect samples that will be returned to Earth and helping us understand how humans can one day survive on Mars.
For the first time, we're going to be taking microphones with us. We're going to have that human sense on another planet. We've never really heard our environment on Mars. Not only will we be able to see things, but we'll be able to hear them as well.
We can turn on the microphone as we're driving so we can hear the wheels just crack over the rocks as we do here on Earth. But once we hear this coming from Mars, it's just like, whoa, that's on another planet, which I think opens up this world of exploration. People that can't necessarily see, now they can listen.
Perseverance rover flies the first helicopter on Mars.
This is the first time we're going to be using a flight-powered vehicle outside of Earth. It's crazy to think about. A little more than 100 years ago, we were learning how to fly here on Earth. And now it's 2021, and we're about to fly a vehicle on another planet.
The helicopter revolutionizes how the rover navigates on Mars by providing an aerial view of the landscape.
Ingenuity is flying to places where they can scout ahead and take much closer pictures than you can from a satellite.
Perseverance begins examining rocks and soil for signs that life existed on Mars in an area that scientists believe was once underwater.
Mars once had flowing water. Here on Earth, obviously, where water flows, well, there's life.
That water might still exist today underground, waiting to be tapped by human missions.
It's got a ground-penetrating radar to look for water below the surface.
The rover is also preparing for human missions by manufacturing oxygen from carbon dioxide in the unbreathable Martian atmosphere.
One of the most abundant resources on Mars is carbon dioxide. We can take that CO2 and pull some of the oxygen out of it and use it for astronauts to breathe and for propellant for the rockets that will get astronauts back to Earth.
The Perseverance rover will explore Mars for nearly 2 years, until it eventually breaks down or stops communicating. 3 months into the mission, China also lands a rover on Mars. In the past, Russia and the European Space Agency have tried to land on Mars, but failed.
It is no easy task to land on Mars. No other country had done it successfully until the Chinese government ended up being the second country.
But no one appears to be as far ahead in getting people to Mars as Elon Musk and SpaceX. Musk has predicted SpaceX will land humans on Mars by 2026 and establish a colony by 2050.
It really comes down to how much will it cost to create a self-sustaining city on Mars for life to become multiplanetary.
SpaceX started building the biggest rocket system ever in 2016 with the express purpose to go straight to Mars. It's called Starship.
The goal of Starship is to make life multiplanetary, make humanity a true spacefaring civilization.
Starship is about to launch its first test mission to orbit the Earth. But not everyone believes it will succeed.
So let's talk about Starship.
Yeah.
Capable of flying a lot of people to the moon and Mars and deep space. You're in the middle of this intense development program. Can you talk a little bit about how you're going to use it, where you guys are in development?
Yeah, I think we're close to getting to orbit with Starship. Well, the overarching goal of Starship is to be able to transport enough tonnage to the moon and to Mars to have a self-sustaining base on the moon and ultimately a self-sustaining city on Mars.
This is the future of SpaceX. Starship is designed to fly almost anywhere in space. The moon, Mars, and other planets.
It's difficult to explain exactly how profound Starship is from a design. I mean, there's really nothing ever has been designed like this. There's nothing like it. Nobody's even proposed such a thing, really, as far as I know.
Starship is a two-part vehicle composed of the Super Heavy rocket booster and a spacecraft for passengers and cargo. The system is collectively referred to as Starship.
It is a very big rocket. It'll be, if it gets to orbit, twice the mass and thrust of the next biggest rocket that has gotten to orbit.
The space shuttle has carried 8 passengers, the most people to fly to space at one time. But Starship has room for up to 100 people or 100 tons of cargo, or a combination of both.
Starship really is a generalized system for going anywhere in the solar system, and with heavy tonnage at low cost. It is designed for both full and rapid reusability. So the booster comes back to the launch pad and is then caught by the launch tower, which is pretty nuts. So it's got an arm that comes out to hold the booster, and then the launch tower puts it back on the launch stand. So in theory, it could be ready to fly an hour later, despite being the biggest booster on Earth, the largest flying object ever made. This is insane.
Elon Musk unveiled the first Starship prototype to the world in 2016.
That's what we want. Yeah.
Its vertical takeoff and landing system is designed to land on the moon, Mars, and other surfaces where there is not enough lift for winged flight.
You can't really use a winged vehicle. You actually have to use a propulsive vehicle. So it's very important for humanity to get excellent at propulsive landing. This is the only way to go.
Musk envisions hundreds of Starships launching with people and cargo that will refuel with orbiting tanker vehicles before landing on Mars. Eventually, Musk believes, a city 1 million strong will thrive on the planet.
I think this is a fundamental question about humanity's future. Will we create a self-sustaining city on another planet before civilization declines, either with a bang or a whimper?
Jeff Bezos also believes millions of people will be living and working in space.
If we're out in the solar system, we can have 1 trillion humans in the solar system, which means we'd have 1,000 Mozarts and 1,000 Einsteins.
Starship is designed to start populating the universe. It's being developed with SpaceX's unique philosophy of testing over and over again knowing the rocket system might crash or explode.
If you're going to try to do something that's very hard and very complex, there's nothing like putting together a piece of hardware and throwing it up and see what happens. And Starship is a great example of this. Almost a dozen Starships have attempted to leave the ground, and pretty much all of them have ended in some form of unplanned rapid disassembly.
It's quite windy here. It's tied down well, though.
SpaceX is building and testing Starship prototypes at the company's massive launch facility called Starbase in the small town of Boca Chica, Texas.
Trying to brand it, we're trying to draw people to the area. Starbase is descriptive of what it is, you know.
Starbase is where the company manufactures rockets, performs test flights, and launches missions.
But we were talking about like building this like giant Borg cube manufacturing complex. Because Starship is built in the vertical, so you need really tall buildings over there.
On May 5th, 2021, Starship completes its first successful landing.
Every failure, they get the data, they figure out what went wrong, they fix it, they try again, they do it quickly, and before you know it, they were able to land it successfully.
SpaceX plans to send Starship into orbit for the first time without crew before the end of 2021.
The ship's has to do at least one orbit, so that's going to take at least 90 minutes to get around the Earth.
The paradigm-shifting spacecraft already has civilians signed up to ride on it. Japanese fashion and retail billionaire Yusaku Maezawa and 8 passengers invited by him are scheduled to fly around the moon and back to Earth in 2023.
It was a very brave person to do this. He is ultimately helping pay for the average citizen to be able to travel to other planets.
The moon represents, the greatest achievement that NASA and arguably the United States has ever had. If that can be replicated, at least in part, by a private company flying private citizens, that would truly be extraordinary.
This is the moment in time that the new space titans and many other space visionaries have been working towards for decades.
How fast can you refuel that thing? Let's go.
Old and new companies with limitless dreams.
The most extraordinary experience, and you can have it too.
Fueled by imagination, innovation.
Like either we're far out there or we're not around at all.
And colossal rockets that will take